Hello there, I'm standing inside a cave as you can see, and I'm going to speak about the Allegory of the Cave by Plato. Plato, as you'd all know, was a great philosopher, a Greek philosopher, and he gave this interesting allegory which explains how we are blinded by what we see and fail to think and recognize the truth behind the apparent reality. What we see might merely be what we are shown, what we are made to see, and it may not be the reality. It would be easier for you to visualize what Plato was speaking about if you look at this cave. This is the far end of a cave, and imagine this to be Plato's cave. In the allegory, Plato describes a group of people who have lived all their lives chained to the wall of a cave, facing the back of the cave, a blank wall. Now, behind these prisoners was something like this, a high ledge, and there was a passage behind it, and at the far end was a fire. People were passing through that way, and so only the things they were carrying was visible. Like they might be carrying dummies of ducks or trees. And due to the fire behind them, the shadow of these objects was visible to the prisoners as it fell on the wall in front of them. Plato talks about the prisoners there, how their only pastime was to predict what would come after, let's say, a duck. They would predict from the patterns they had noticed, such as 3 ducks might have been followed by a tree very frequently, so they had all sorts of theories. One day what happens is that one of these prisoners is freed of his chain and is finally able to look behind. And when he looks behind, he's shocked because he realizes that the world of shadows that he had been accustomed to had been merely projections of what other people were carrying. This leaves him totally shattered. He realizes his folly of having trusted blindly and decides to embark on the search of the truth. He goes beyond the fire and plunges himself into the darkness. This journey is described as arduous because he had to climb a steep incline. Now, Plato compares this with the pain that people feel when having to face the truth that their life had been a lie. At long last, he sees a light and walks towards it. He had reached the mouth of the cave, but now he felt blinded by the light because he had known only darkness. His eyes were in pain. It took him a while to get accustomed to the light, but when he could finally see, he saw how beautiful the real world was, how glorious an actual tree, and how full of life the ducks. He goes further to search for what is the source of all this light, this beauty, and then he sees the sun, the one principle which is responsible for the whole world existing. Having finally discovered the truth, he feels sorry for his fellow prisoners. He decides to go back and tell them about this beautiful world that they were missing out on. When he saw his friends, he was totally excited about telling them the truth that he had come to witness. But he failed to recognize the power of darkness. He had become a changed person who was no longer interested in the old games of predicting what comes after the ducks. He was no longer good at it. And it didn't matter to him at all because he'd come across the truth. But he was in for a shock because his friends rejected him for being different. And perhaps even predictably, not one of them believed a word he said. Socrates being poisoned and Jesus being crucified are examples of the extent to which people can go to shut the voice of anyone who questions their perception of reality. How should this allegory of the cave help us? We should think of this allegory to remind ourselves that what we see, however true it appears, still needs to be investigated. We should remember that reality is not limited to the direction of our view. We need to look in different directions. There might be a reality that is beyond and above us. It is rightly said that those who believe they know everything learn nothing. This allegory prompts us to look beyond what our sight permits through the light of our reasoning, to give some thought to what other people might be trying to draw our attention to at least not reject something without analyzing it. Plato compares the people who carry these puppets to politicians and powerful people who kind of tell us what we should believe, who are our opinion makers, and who give us our thoughts. They tell us what to put our faith in. Some may be deliberately trying to mislead us for their gain. Some others know a little bit and may genuinely be trying to guide us to the light. But do they know everything? How can we be sure that this is the way? We need to go on the search on our own, a painful search, but to find our own truth is the only way to be liberated from the lies. It would be painful, of course, to challenge what we've always believed in. Our scriptures, our leaders, our religious leaders, whatever has been taught by our elders, what we read, what we see. Of course, there might be elements of truth in them, but they need not be the whole truth. Go on the search, the painful search yourself, and you look at the one principle, the sun, and see everything in the light of that. The only thing I want you to carry from this is the responsibility to search, even when it means coming out of your comfort zone, which is painful, as Plato agrees in this allegory. But it's the only way to come to the light, to the real joy of living. See you again in the next video. Keep this thought until then. Bye-bye.